Leaving the sports world can be a difficult experience, especially if you aren't sure what your next shift is going to be. Judy Gilbert, a former university hockey player and now a business leadership coach and consultant, will introduce you to other athletes who have made the successful transition to the business world. You will hear the tactics that they use to turn their experience into a successful new career and how you can too. Welcome to The Next Shift. Here is your host and mentor, Judy Gilbert.
Welcome to this episode of The Next Shift. I'm Judy Gilbert, and I'm thrilled to be here with you talking about how you can use the experience you have gained on the playing field to help you become successful in the business world as well. On this episode of The Next Shift, I am joined by Joe Shunock, who has been a realtor in the Belleville, Ontario region for nearly 30 years. Joe grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, but his travels as an Ontario Hockey League goaltender brought him to his new home. Joe talks to us about the difficult decision that he faced deciding when it was the right time to hang up his hockey dreams for good, and the identity changes that he went through in that process. He also talks about how goaltending helped him learn the critical skill of focus that helps him find success in his career today. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Jude.
Thanks for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm very grateful that you have made the time for us, so that's wonderful. So I have really, in our introduction, I've told the audience a little bit about you, but how about sharing something with our viewers that they probably don't know about you?
Well, that's a good one. I actually have been racking my brains about that idea. What don't you know about me? It seems my life's an open book, but a bit of a political junkie, a huge fan of American politics. Not recently, though. And other than that, I've had, because of athletics, I think it's because that is our topic about transitioning from athletics. I've had double hip replacement, both hips done the same day.
Yes.
About 8 years ago. So an impact of athletics.
And probably not something that those folks would be aware of. So that's great. Well, thanks for sharing that
athletics
with us.
and genetics contributed to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Joe, tell me, because you played hockey and you were a goalie, what drew you to the game? Why did you want to play hockey?
Thinking back to when you were a kid, my parents did not come from any form of athletics, and we had a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, and we're always playing ball hockey outside. And lo and behold, it was time to sign up for hockey. And I said, hey, it's a good Canadian thing to do. And it was always a draw for me. You know, remember when we were kids, Saturday night hockey and in the house and in the family gathering and around the TV. And there was always a draw to that sport. Again, I think just because we are Canadian and we were so exposed to it as kids. And I think that was really where it started, was as a young kid and seeing other Canadian kids doing it. And I said, hey, got to get involved. Yeah.
Well, it didn't hurt that you weren't too bad at it either, right?
Well, not very good in the beginning, but I was a forward and a defenseman. And ultimately, I think I was a bit lazy in the beginning. And I transitioned into goaltending. I figured I didn't have to skate as hard. And actually, that's the funniest part, is that over time, my skating became one of my strongest attributes, just because, lugging that equipment around. It's a hell of a lot lighter today than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And so that's really what brought you to Belleville, wasn't it?
Well, I came to play for the Bulls back in the early 80s, and I never left. I've been stuck here ever since. Wow. Loving every minute of it, though.
Tell us a little bit, Joe, about your transition from sport to business and what you do now.
Well, as I don't know if your people know, but I work in real estate. I have for almost 30 years. That was almost a fluke, is how getting into the real estate end of things, and almost by default, based on our economics of the time and what I'd been exposed to, always had a hankering for the development and real estate world. But to go back to the mode of hockey and how that contributes to that transition, I think, you're going to hear probably a lot of people say, oh, I learned to be a team player. But I think more importantly, because I was a goaltender, it's the ability to focus and the hyper focus on projects, tasks, and really getting to outcomes. Because in my world, you don't get paid unless deals happen. You don't get the luxury of having a paycheck every week, which you know.
That's my world too, as a consultant. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that really led I gained an ability to really focus in on, being deal driven and task driven. And that to me was one of the big elements of hockey, and taking that lesson along with all the obvious of team play and learning how to get along with others. And I think that's one of the biggest attributes that I pulled into my business world.
It's interesting that you say about being focused, because for me, I certainly have recognized my transition from sport into business. And I think it took me a long time to realize that I had those portable skills or those transferable skills, and we just use them and they become habit. But I think to be able to focus and to be able to really hone in on what our clients are looking for. I think for me, Joe, when I meet with my clients and they talk about what they feel their needs are, and that I can really hone in on and focus on what it is that they're looking for, and to be able to deliver that as well. And I think those transferable skills are so important as we transition.
Yeah, I think another element, the goaltending element, where we sit at the back of the play and we watch things unfold in front of us, and we tend to see a bigger picture. And you will note that a lot of the analysts on Hockey Night in Canada and other sports venues are all goalies. Yeah. And I think it's because of the perspective that we have from where we're positioned on the ice. We see things form, we see patterns, and I think that's critical. And that same element applies to my world today, that seeing opportunity, patterns, and determining objectives from what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because as a forward and having played ice hockey, for me, it's a different perspective altogether, right?
Very much.
I mean, I really wanted to get down to that goalie, but to see it from a different angle is really interesting. So thanks for that perspective. Joe, what do you think when you transition from sport into business? What do you think some of those challenges were for you?
I think it's interesting that question, because one of the most difficult things was actually determining that sports was done. That was one of the hardest things to overcome, that you always hold on, you think there's going to be another opportunity, or you're going to have a new challenge in the sport. So recognizing an end, and you recognize it, and now it's time to move on.
And carve out a new identity.
Exactly.
Right?
So I think that recognition of the sport has ended, and now it's time to get on with your life, as my dad said. Time to get to school and get on with your life. But coming to that realization was very difficult, but I think it was critical, because it also helped me to develop the ability to recognize, again, back to business, this is a dead end. It's time to move and shift and change direction. So that, I think, was critical. As tough as it was, I think it was vital in my development.
Well, and I certainly agree with you. And I think that's for a lot of athletes and a lot of folks, that whether they played varsity or whether in your case playing in the Ontario Hockey League, is that our identity is carved out for us at a very early age.
Yeah, very much.
That is what we see ourselves as, and that's who we see ourselves as. And so when that is gone, then it's, well, who am I now? And I know for me, I struggled with that as well. And so then for me, it was around, okay, so now who am I? Now, what is my new identity? And I think I started to carve that out in business, using some of those transferable skills. And so I think that certainly that was a big challenge for me. And so when I hear you say that, it certainly resonates with me as well. What about opportunities? What do you think sport gave you in terms of opportunities, Joe?
Well, being in this community and having stayed here, literally grew up here. I left Sault Ste. Marie at a young age, originally went to Cornwall, a new transition at the farthest point away from Sault Ste. Marie that you could be drafted to. And so it really did force me to grow up. And in recognizing that, these new communities you come into, and you really become entrenched in the community. And it's that entrenchment and all the people that I knew through sport were part of the catapult into the business of real estate. So the laying of the groundwork, the fact that you're known in a community for sport, that did help make the transition into growing this business
Yes.
that a little bit easier.
Yeah.
You still had to work. You had to be smart about what you do, but I think that did give me a definite leg up.
Yeah. And I think that your success, it also speaks to your character because of some of those portable skills. It's about humility. It's about respectful behavior and having that resilience. And so when you build that foundation early, which you were doing through sport and doing that networking and making those connections, that did transition for you into business, where people said, you know what, I know Joe, I know his character.
Yeah,
And
big part of
so now I'm quite comfortable working with Joe in this business environment.
And the craziest thing is that it's not a conscious thing.
No,
that,
absolutely.
Again, because we're here working and
We're doing.
students and doing our thing and growing as athletes and as individuals, that transition was actually unconscious, and it really did create that leg up, as I said.
Yeah, and I think that certainly from my experiences, it was very similar. Moving out of where I played varsity ice hockey, recognizing it was time to make a living, and that school was over for me, and so then what does that next chapter look like? And I think it's we're not conscious about some of those things, right? We just do what we know is the right thing, and I talked earlier with another gentleman around, when we have respect for our teammates, but that goes beyond our team, and that same goes towards for our opposition. And so those are some of those characters that we take into that business world.
Yeah, right? I agree. And I face opposition every day.
Yes.
But you learn to respect the opposition.
Yes.
You fight hard. And obviously because that compete level that we learned as athletes, it doesn't leave you. You still want to win. You want to, get the deal. And that sticks with you.
Yeah. And I think, though, being part of a team is that we don't want to win at all costs.
Right.
Right? We're about, if we can win and the other individual or team or organization can win, then that's more satisfying, I think, coming from the environment that we have come from.
Well, you don't last in this business for almost 30 years by creating a total adversarial environment.
Yes.
I've always maintained that in our world, deals have to be fair. They have to be fair to go together. The seller would have to give up a little, a buyer might have to give a little more. But because it is such a small town, I still have to face those people.
Yes.
I'm walking through the mall or at a public event. And so you want to make darn sure that our deals are fair and that we're, treating people properly.
So, Joe, we've talked a little bit about those portable skills or those transferable skills.
Right.
Are there some others that sort of come to mind for you that have made that transition a little bit easier, and that you feel confident that has sort of started in the sports side of things and that has moved over to business?
Well, I think as a young athlete, you're forced to continue to work on your craft. You have to improve, you have to evolve. And that requires a bit of patience, obviously, because it's not going to happen overnight. And understanding that you have to earn your way into the roster and you have to earn your way into play. Yeah. It requires definite perseverance, but it also requires that patience element in understanding that as long as you keep doing what you need to do to improve, that perseverance will ultimately lead to opportunity. But being patient as well as persistent in recognizing, you'll see your spots and when you need to act and kick it into gear.
Of course. And I think as a consultant, I have to be very mindful of that. It's about having that patience, building the trust with the client, and recognizing that this is a long-term relationship that I want to build. And it's not just about today or next week or next month. It's about next year and the year after. And so it's having that patience to do that and being resilient around the fact that not everything's going to happen.
Yeah. And you touched on a key point too about trust. And as a goaltender, that your teammates ultimately have to have trust in you to be able to perform at the key times and to to do what you need to do when it matters most. And that's a process, is developing that trust with teammates and ultimately with clients. And the key is to be conscious of that and really, really working daily to maintain and build on the trust aspect.
Yeah, and I think that trust is always with us, right? And I draw on my example as the executive director with the United Way. I had a whole community that needed to trust me, a whole team, a board of directors, and so over the course of several years to be able to build that trust and earn that trust, and where people wanted to support the organization, and that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. But I think that's part of our reputations. Mm-hmm. Right? That's your 30-year reputation. That's my 30-year reputation. And being able to continue to hone our skills and work in this community, it's about those soft skills and those types of things, right?
It sure is. And as a young startup in business, the perseverance aspect was so critical. And now it's gotten to a point where I tend to get more direct phone calls of, Joe, just come and do business with me, as opposed to having to compete and earn the deal, in competition with other competitors. It's been this interesting evolution where, people are now calling and just saying, yeah, come and do it. And that's a handy thing.
Oh my gosh. And that certainly lets you know how you're doing, doesn't it? That is the greatest measurement in terms of our own business and how we're being perceived in the marketplace, isn't it?
For sure.
Really? Okay, great. Okay, Joe, so we're going to do a shootout round, which as a goalie,
we didn't have shootouts in my day. That's how old I am. It didn't exist.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you 5 questions and we're going to just quickly do it over the next minute and a half, okay?
All right, go easy.
Okay, all right. So Joe, what's your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby? Watching CNN. It's a sad hobby.
But it's a hobby.
Yeah.
What are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
Worker.
Yeah.
Dad. Husband.
Okay.
And not necessarily in that order.
In that
they
order?
do change.
Okay. What's the first thing you do in the morning? Do you watch CNN?
No, get a cup of coffee.
Cup of coffee?
Cup of coffee.
Okay. What time's your day start?
Well, that's interesting. I don't use a clock anymore.
Okay.
I'm going to tell the quick one, 60 seconds. But I literally I get as much sleep as I need, and I get up when I get up. And that could be at 5:30. It could be at 8.
Yeah.
But my day starts, I'm up and usually working on the computer side of our business and correspondence and that kind of stuff.
Good. If somebody paid you a compliment, what is a compliment that most people would pay you? What would they say about you, Joe?
Just that I'm persistent.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very persistent. I, stay on task, and that would be it.
All right. And when are you most productive?
Mornings.
Yeah. All right. And that's for me too. And I find that after 1 or 2, I need some activity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's why I got to fit the gym in there somewhere.
All right. Good for you. Okay. So, Joe, is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers?
Well, I think
piece of advice.
Obviously, in the vein of coaching and mentoring, I think persistence in anything is critical. Mm-hmm. And they talk about, finding your passion. And we kind of evolve as people. And I don't think people truly know what those passions are. But I really think you have to keep an open mind about where you're heading in life and in business. And I think by having an open mind that you will ultimately gravitate to where it is that you're supposed to be.
Wow. Okay. I like that. Thank you. So how can somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to? Do you have a website?
Just call me.
Call Joe.
Call Joe.
Call Joe at 613.
Social media, we're out there.
Okay. Wonderful.
Pretty easy to get me.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing this, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.